doesn't conservatism seem to conserve anything? That's the $24,000 question, which a lot of well-meaning red state people seem to be struggling with. Since the rise of the conservative movement in America in the 1950s with the likes of National Review, and especially since the 1980s with the Ronald Reagan presidency, conservative has stood as a shorthand for traditional and preserving the status quo and what makes America America. Yet if we look at the cultural and social radicalism presently engulfing the United States, we can see that what has happened in reality is the cultural norms of society have been dragged over concrete leftward by the media, pop entertainment, law, and education, while conservatism attempts to hold on to what was previously normalized. Conservatives are professional hagglers with the forces of progress and are engaged in a constant dialectic with the left. The resulting synthesis isn't quite what the social radicals would like to see, at least not initially, but the compromise is only ever in a leftward direction. Thus, the conservatives of today are essentially the liberals of 20 years ago, and so on and on. This is a feature, not a bug, of conservatism. Perhaps the main thing that makes conservatism hopeless against the forces of progress is that it is non-ideological. It's a mindset. Russell Kirk, El Duce of American conservatism, was adamant that conservatism be non-ideological. From Kirk and lasting right up until today, conservatism is essentially a posture or attitude. In Kirk's aptly named 10 Conservative Principles, he notes that the first principle conservatives believe in is the existence of an enduring moral order. In his second point, he also argues that conservatism adheres to custom, convention, and continuity. So the question naturally arises, what does this mean in the American context? Historically, the higher moral order of American society was enlightened by essentially various strands of Protestant Christianity. Fatally, however, the prevalence of this Protestant faith among the creators of culture in American society, and indeed among America's elites, has been thoroughly eroded, particularly in the 20th century. What academic agent calls the Boomer Truth regime has replaced American Protestant Christianity as the moral yardstick by which America should measure itself. Instead of the Ten Commandments and the gospel of Jesus Christ, the benchmark of moral virtue became anti-racism, civil rights, and inclusivity. With this change in higher moral principles from the top down imposed onto society, we have seen the rise of new American customs, conventions, and continuity, all rooted in the name of civil rights. The PragerU tweet shown at the beginning of this video is also not entirely 100% off the mark, but is indicative of the problem. Americanism is inextricably linked to the classical liberal tradition, which both the forces of progress and conservatism can lay claim to. The WASP patricians of 19th century America were proponents of what Paul Gottfried called bourgeois liberalism. Yet, this political framing was understood within the context of a Protestant ethic. Stripped away from the religious moorings of Protestantism, the internal logic of liberal society does seem in part to be playing itself out before us today. The struggle in America is now between those post-Christians of liberal heritage who have embraced the cult of civil rights, and those of a liberal heritage who haven't entirely detached themselves from a Christian mooring. If customs, traditions, and conventions are part and parcel of conservatism, America now has new customs and traditions, like popular democracy, voting rights, Pride Month, Martin Luther King Day, Juneteenth, affirmative action, and the promotion of inclusivity. These have adapted themselves to be the norm not only in the U.S., but across the civilized world through American financial and cultural hegemony. The primary convention, since FDR at least, has been the petition of an increasingly centralized, unitary state for solutions to perceived local problems and particularities. First, these were economic concerns, but now are increasingly more socially focused, beginning in the 1960s. So the question is, what is there left to conserve nowadays in an increasingly secular, degenerating progressive society, drunk on the rhetoric of civil rights? The answer is very little, unfortunately. This is the failure of the conservative movement. In the modern age, the force of religion has largely been replaced with ideology, particularly political ideology. And to paraphrase Joseph de Maistre, philosophy or ideology is a shabby substitute of religion for modern man. Metaphysical deficiencies of progressivism aside, Progressives are able to at least produce a force and zeal which is not matched by the posture of conservatism, confused and at odds with themselves as they are. Fundamentally, the problem with American conservatism is it doesn't really have a coherent vision of what it wants America to be, let alone an ideology other than follow the Constitution and my founders. In lieu of an ideology, American conservatism could have explicitly had the Christian religion as its guiding star, but the separation of church and state and religious pluralism among the different Christian sects within America would have likely made that difficult. And indeed, it's only now, with all Christian denominations under increasing pressure, that there's to be found a degree of congeniality among the fervent practitioners of divergent denominations. Marshalling any sort of unified, coherent, conservative agenda is complicated by the inherent pluralism of the United States and clear lack of a vision about what America should be for so-called conservatives. What Steve Bannon wants is not what Steve Turley wants. It's not what Kevin Gutzman wants, and it's not what Pedro Gonzalez wants. There isn't even a unified conception about what America is. Is America a loose association of states banded together for mutual defense and a common market with regional customs? Or is America an indivisible union under the imperial city of Washington, D.C., and peopled by Americans with a capital A? There doesn't appear to be a clear consensus among modern conservatives, just as there's no consensus about what role religion should play in society. Should it be a private matter? Should it be a state matter? How should different faiths and peoples who now inhabit America be treated in the modern day? Again, no consensus. The real reason why American conservatism hasn't conserved anything is because conservatism itself, broadly viewed, doesn't have a unifying vision or goal anymore, and that which it seeks to preserve has already largely been lost. But as conservatism in America begins to sicken and is being blown over like an old tree in a windstorm, perhaps there's a chance that in the future, free from the shadow of conservatism, something else may take root in the soil and offer a better alternative for a healthier society. This has been Mr. Patriarch. Thanks to all my backers, and I hope you guys have enjoyed your exclusive Conserving Nothing video. As of this recording, we're only $9 away from the second goal, at which point I'll release 2 other pieces of content for backers only. I'm personally grateful for all of your support and love making videos for you guys. I've got a couple ideas I'm mulling over right now to make as regular releases on the channel, which should be coming out in the next week or two. I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Patriarch out.